Go ahead.
I'm Travis Winters. I'm going to demonstrate sculpting an eyeball real quick for you, everyone. So I've kind of started one already, which I don't know if anyone can even see, but
We'll move that.
yeah, so I've got, I'll do the whole thing actually, but here's kind of how I start on a cylinder.
Yeah, there you go.
So in order to start, so I'll just do it on the other side. I usually just take, if I'm working hollow, I tend to work solid a lot, which I don't really have to worry about this as much, but I'll just take in, like if this piece of clay is really quite stiff at this point, so it's not moving all over on me. So I'll take some water, really just starting to work in the eye socket. Kind of until I get it to a point that I feel is deep enough. If you look at a person's eye socket, there's no nose on it, but it's generally pretty deep compared to the side of our nose. Since I don't have a nose, I don't really have to worry about it on this. So, and I'll usually just start out. I kind of build every part to the eye rather than. There's some people that sculpt eyes out of just a ball and kind of.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. There should be a power cord.
There you go, power cord.
Alright, yeah. So I like build all the parts to the eye in order to make an eye rather than kind of sculpting them in and like shaving them away. I'll actually kind of insert everything. So I'll just start out by rolling a ball of clay. And I don't want to use the whole ball just because that seems way too much clay. It's a little big. So actually just take it, which I don't have my knife, but I'll cut it in half. And that way, usually I'm making two eyes. I'll have two of the same size, hopefully. It doesn't always happen just because I don't cut it very evenly, but. And try to get it about as round as I can, which the shape gets distorted when I put it in. I'll just kind of slip. I'm just putting water, but usually I'll use slip. And just kind of push it into the socket. Alright, so that should work. So now I've got the actual eyeball in the socket, and now I need to work on putting the eyelids over it. And I do that just by using a coil. This is where some people will do them drastically different and kind of go in and kind of just push the eyelids into the ball of clay. I like to add it on top, just kind of how I was taught to do it, and it just works better for me, I guess. I've tried both ways, and I just prefer this method. So I'll just roll out a coil of clay. And kind of depending on the size of the eye, if I'm making a really big eye, I'll use a bigger coil. If it's a small eye, a lot smaller of a coil. And instead of adding a top and bottom eyelid, if you look at an eye, like the inside of our eye is kind of, it doesn't really move there. So I just take my coil and just bend it, and that'll be the inside part of our eye. And then one becomes the top lid and one becomes the bottom lid. And before I put it on, I always usually just wet down where it's going just so it sticks really well. And I'll take my coil and just start to kind of push it on there. That's actually a really small coil for it, but we'll make it work. So just kind of starting to shape the bottom lid a little bit. Just kind of use my thumb and push it up and around the eye. And by taking the top, just kind of laying it over. And that's kind of gives you the part where eyelids meet. And that's kind of what lets our eyelid move rather than putting two on that I have the same thing on the other side. And then by using this tool is basically the only tool I ever use, I feel like. I can start to really shape the eye and start to actually define the eyelid. And one really important thing, sometimes when you're doing eyes, this part doesn't want to go down and it kind of makes the eye look really flat. So when you're doing it, you kind of have to like go around the eye and kind of work the lid to make it appear round. And if not, sometimes it ends up looking really flat. Just kind of starting to shape, and kind of till I get about the thickness of the lid I want to. And I can just take the extra on the bottom and kind of blend it down. So there's the bottom, it's on there, and there's a huge gap, and I'll always go back in and kind of fill in those spots. And I'm just gonna do the same thing to the top, kind of trying to get it about how I want it. I'm kind of worried about the thickness of it first.
Where did you learn how to do this?
Um,
Or you said somebody had a method they showed you?
well, I took a figure modeling class in undergrad a
Okay.
long time ago. And that's kind of how he taught me how to do it. He would actually like put the tear duct in before he put the lids on, which I stopped doing that because I always mess them up. So I just add that afterwards, just because I'm very prone to messing things up. So I'm starting to kind of just define the lids a little bit more. And then that's a basic eye. I like to add the tear duct in to my eyes just because I think it's they just look a lot better to me. So to kind of do that, this is really close, the front part of the eye. So this would be a right eye, if I can think right. So I'm just gonna kind of try to open that up a little bit. I just use a brush to kind of push it forward and really round that off nice. And now there's like a nice big spot to put in, like basically just a tiny little ball of clay in to make a tear duct. I usually do this after it's sat a little bit longer too, rather than trying to do when it's really wet. But it seems to be working all right. So just take basically just like a little tiny ball of clay and set it down there and just kind of start to push it in to start to get the shape of it. And then just take a brush again.
That's good. That really separates the lid from there.
Yeah, just kind of, that's more of what a realistic eye would look like too. There's kind of a quick eye, and then as I said, I'll go in and I'll usually add clay around the bottom and add eyebrow above it, just to kind of finish it off, but I won't.
Yeah.